Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host, Tony Cañas. And today I have a very special episode. Today I have Marissa Rutkowski. Marissa, we connected a little less than a year ago, or
Hmm?
yeah,
Yeah.
almost exactly a year ago, according to LinkedIn.
Yep.
And I have no idea how we originally connected, but
Oh, I'm pretty sure it was Meg. I'm sure
okay.
somehow Meg McKean. She's like she weaves people together. So I'm
Uh-huh.
pretty sure it came from Meg.
Makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So uh were you really, so you were kind of in the background of my uh experience with insurance
Hmm.
and within the industry, and
Yeah.
then you really jumped into the foreground at last year's Applied Net conference,
Hmm.
uh where you, Ryan Deeds, and a couple of other people hosted a session
Hmm.
on mental health.
We did.
And now we're both on the board of Insure Equality.
Hmm.
Now we kind of run into each other a lot more.
Yeah.
Uh, so for the listeners, in my brain, Marissa is kind of the leading edge of turning mental health from a taboo into something that we talk about, we deal with, we support
Mhm.
each other in our industry, and that's exactly why I invited you this time.
Mhm.
The and Marissa runs uh, the employee group. The
It's a community. We call them community of interest at Applied. Yep.
so
For mental health and wellness. Yep.
mental health and wellness community of interest at Applied. Okay, so anybody on the agency side of the industry, or anybody that deals with agents every day. So basically, anybody other than claims, basically,
Hmm.
and even a little bit of claims, will immediately realize that that's a big thing, because Applied is by far the largest agency management system. Uh, so it's a large company, lots of employees. Uh, so um, Applied even having a community of interest for mental health uh, and wellness is a big thing. So anyway, let's
It's
and you've spent your entire career in insurance, right?
I did. Aside from a small stint in the steel industry, which is just as male dominated as the insurance industry. I've been in this my family goes way back in insurance, so we just kind of grew up with it.
Okay, so family agency,
Hmm.
uh, and then you come over to the technology side
Hmm.
of the industry, right? And,
Yep.
and it's now been almost 14 years. You end
It
up at
has.
Applied. Okay.
Yep.
Um, so how how did how did you end up uh on the leading edge of mental health in our industry?
Um, it's so funny. I don't think of myself that way. And I always bring myself with a trigger and a content warning.
Yes, I was about to say that. Yes.
Right. We could be
Mhm.
talking about, trigger warnings for suicide, suicidal ideation, tough mental health conditions. Um, I I have a strong family history with mental health challenges. My brother died by suicide in 2003. He was a year older than me. I'm the youngest of 9 humans, so there's a lot of us. My mother's mother died by suicide in 1941 before I was born. Um, and I struggle, right? I struggle, but I always thought my struggles were very situational. And I've really been focused on my son for the past, 12, 12 years. He's, he had depression and anxiety at age 8. He had suicidal ideation at age 10. And there were a lot, that really informed my work at Applied. Because when I started, that's when he started, like there were a lot of familial things going on. And so early on, I had like intermittent FMLA, and I remember it was in 5th grade, and I got a phone call like, your son's hallucinating in school. Like, well, I need to go home right now. Like, it was a very unpredictable thing. And when with my history, I assumed that my son would probably run into mental health challenges at some point. I didn't think there would be suicidal ideation at the age of 10, and there's really no playbook for that, right? You just kind of wend your way through it. And we had some really, really tough times where 2018 was a tough year. And I remember one day walking into work, I'm going to be very honest here with the story. He's never been a harm to himself, but he was worried about harming himself. And so for months in the summer of 2018, I drove around in my car with sharp instruments from the house, all of the medication, because he's like, Mom, I can't have it out. I'm like, okay. So I just drive to work. And my drive it's like an hour. So one day I'm crying on my way to work. And I compose myself, because you leave it at the door, right? That's what we've all learned. And as I walked up the walk to our building, I couldn't stop. And that day I decided that it was okay for me to be who I am. This is who I am today. I'm struggling. I have challenges. My child has challenges, but I can walk through the door and do my job, even though I'm crying, right? It was kind of revelatory for me. It was like, I'm just walking through the door and doing my thing. And that started sort of a domino effect where mental health became a very prominent thing for me at work. And in 2020, Applied, like many companies, started creating communities of interest for veterans at Applied and women in tech, LGBTQIA, Black at Applied. Sorry, I was trying to tick them all off in my head. But I found myself hunting for mental health as a subject. So we started with a small topic, and we worked our way towards creating a community of interest. And it's funny that you mentioned that it's a tough thing in insurance, because when we petitioned, a colleague of mine, we sort of petitioned to be a community of interest. And I walked in knowing full well that this topic was going to scare them, right? Like, you think about people talking about mental health or physical disabilities, HIPAA. I mean, that all of the things you would expect an organization to be like, wait, you have to show us that this is going to be a legit space. And my colleague and I came prepared, right? We had a mission, we had a vision, we had a code of conduct, we had rules of engagement. Like the basic tenet is, if you shared your personal experience, nobody gets to question that. It's your lived experience. And so we really just started having open conversations and championing them at work. And the thing we found, because it was 2021, is people were clamoring for that because of the pandemic. So we struck a moment in time where, because of the screen, like you and I are talking, we've met, we're here, but like there's that impersonality of, I'm just sitting here at home all the time. And so I think we just tapped into something that people, not just in the insurance industry, but universally, were clamoring for. And that was just personal validation and acceptance. So it just started a long laundry list of conversations that we continue.
what so I'm 41 now. So older millennial.
Mhm,
And been working professionally since 2006.
mhm.
I started in a very conservative industry in trucking as a
Okay,
dispatcher. Did 3 years in
yeah.
trucking. Got downsized with when the economy tanked in '09. Ended up in insurance, another really conservative, much more
Mhm,
white collar but really conservative industry. And um, ooh, yeah, you're supposed to leave it at home, right?
mhm.
Uh,
Always.
and I'm extremely lucky. One of the big things that really struck me during the session at Applied Net
Mhm,
um, was how, and I can't remember if it was Ryan Dietz who said it or who said it, but basically, uh, given the percentages, given the stats of the number of people in the states that struggle with mental health, uh everybody, it touches everybody, right? If it's not you, it's one of your loved ones for sure, right? So I am extremely lucky in that it's not me.
right.
I'm extremely lucky that I don't have those kind of issues. Now I come from a family where on my mom's side everybody
Mhm,
struggles with depression. uh
mhm.
and then I got married right out of college, and my I was married for 4 years. My ex-wife was diagnosed uh, borderline by one doctor and bipolar by a
Right.
different doctor. It was
It's
a
tough.
giant mess,
Mhm. It's
and
tough.
I had just transitioned to insurance, and uh, I had at my first insurance company, I was working in the call center. I had gotten her a job. She had in and out of jobs.
Mhm.
I had gotten her a job in the call center, uh, and we couldn't talk about it at work, right? Right if when something when she was in crisis, and we didn't have
Mhm.
kids, thank God. But when she was in
Mhm.
crisis, it's hard to even talk to your supervisor about it, right?
Absolutely.
Because we just had a big taboo on it. Uh, Fast forward to my current life. I've now been dating Renee, who's also in the industry,
Mhm.
for 11 years. Her family, lots of anxiety, like very serious anxiety,
Yeah.
and she does have one sister who is very close. They're 18 months separate in age,
Mhm.
and the family is very close. uh and her sister has serious mental health struggles. She spent a good part of last year in outpatient intensive
Yeah,
mental
like
health
partial
care.
hospitalization.
And
Mhm.
uh, uh, Renee has been taking time off for the last couple of years, focusing on other things. But and was able to care for Julie. But holy crap, I can only imagine what going through something like that, having a family member go through something like that, in the old corporate world,
Mhm.
would be extremely challenging. And uh, so that combination of how common this is in our
Oh,
society,
yeah.
right? If it's not you, it's one of your loved ones, uh, which means that's the light bulb that went on for me at that session that you guys organized. Um, we're all dealing with it, whether on our own or
Mhm.
loved ones that deal with it, and yet it's one of the taboo topics at work,
Right.
right? So Gen Z is leading us down this new world of paying attention to mental health, and even in the
Mhm.
corporate settings. Um, so glad that it is happening.
Absolutely.
So the community of interest.
Mhm.
It's now been around for a couple of
3
years,
years. I
3 years.
think that 3 years, 2 years officially, 3 years with a grassroots topic.
Okay.
Switch glasses on my head. I need a bigger headband here. Sorry.
What what has been the feedback from your fellow applied employees uh
So
of having that resource?
the feedback brings me to tears. The feedback is similar to what you got after that session at AppliedNet, where people really felt sort of I don't want to use the word sacred, but they treated that space with respect. And our community does the same. We have colleagues who share about grief, right? We had a colleague who lost her daughter to cancer, and this community sort of fills her heart with the fact that she can come here and just explain something. I'm having a day, and people will swarm and just help support her. We've had people talk about loss of family members, loss of pets, children who live with autism, children who live with trisomy 21 or Down syndrome, people who talk about panic disorder. Like the feedback we get is that they're so happy that this community exists and that there's this space where they can honestly and openly share, and it's without fear of any recrimination, right? You talk about the fact that back in the day, you wouldn't discuss these things at work, or you wouldn't disclose. We do let people know this is an open forum, right? You post with your own discretion what you want to share. And we're also not HR, right? So people can work with our human resources and people team to determine how and what they want to disclose. So your point about your former wife, right? There was just no disclosing of this condition. But people feel a sense of relief that the community actually exists. And it it really does often bring me to tears when people share very heavy things. And like people shared very heavy things after the Buffalo shooting a couple of years ago, and very heavy things after the Uvalde shooting. And I'm not getting political. There were very heavy things going on in the world. And people came to this community to just find a sense of comfort. So I'm always really buoyed by the fact that people find the value in each other, because they treat each other with compassion in this space consistently. So
That's fantastic.
yeah.
Did has management openly said at this point that they're very happy they
Absolutely. Like they're very proud of all of the communities
okay?
of interest, right? We've worked very hard, like at Applied, we call it diversity, inclusion, and belonging. Like we really
Love that.
center on the B for belonging. And that's what we really focus our communities of interest on. And there's a lot of intersectionality. We all try to work together. In April, it's Neurodiversity Month. That's our community's month. But one of the weeks is Black Maternal Health Week. And so we partnered with our Black at Applied team to bring a session on openly discussing the challenges that Black women and women of color endure in terms of being pregnant in the US. Like it was just a really open conversation. And the teams work together to just bring open dialogue across all of the topics. So the company's very supportive. And I think they're very, very pleased with the engagement we get and with our community. It's our engagement in our channel is pretty high. So it's definitely recognized.
The session at AppliedNet. So to give the listeners kind of an idea, this is an outside facing conference. right, that attracts mostly applied clients and a bunch of vendors. So there's 4,000 people there. Some of them from applied, the majority from agencies, independent agencies that use applied.
Absolutely.
So it's a big conference. There are tons of sessions, very good sessions. Most of them are technical, one way or another.
Mhm.
And then this a mental health session. Okay, so we had a good turnout. The panelists were fantastic. The session ends, and I want to say a third to half of the room doesn't go anywhere.
They
Right,
stay.
yes, like people are crying. They have shared their, like, people from the audience have shared their struggles. And quite clearly there is a strong need for this in
Huge.
our world, a
Mhm.
huge need for this in our world. Quite clearly, this is overdue. And I don't know what it was last year, but I have gone to hundreds of insurance conferences. It's my full-time job is basically going to insurance
Right.
conferences. And before last year, I had never seen a session on mental health. And then last year, there was a fantastic session at Applied, at CPCU. Uh, Heather Blevins and the Claims Interest Group had a session on claims mental health, which is a huge issue that had never been discussed before. And then the Insure Equality Summit
Hmm.
uh, had a huge component on, it wasn't
Oh,
just one session, it's just a humongous component on mental health, because uh, and before the Insure Equality Summit, there had I had never made the connection,
hmm.
um, that there is a lot of intersection between uh, diversity and inclusion and mental health. Like to Elisa Stamp, that was a natural thing. Uh,
Right.
as the summit was being planned, in the back of my head, I kept questioning. I wasn't super involved in the planning, but I kept questioning, how much does mental health have to do with DEI, right? The problem we're trying to solve is DEI. I
Hmm.
agree mental health is important, but how much does it have to do, right? And especially
Right.
for a new organization doing its first in-person conference. And I didn't say anything, but uh, in the conference I understood, of course, if you are the only trans person in every room you walk into, if you are
Absolutely.
one of very few black people in the room, if you're the only
Absolutely.
black woman in leadership, right? If like if you're a diverse crowd in a uh largely white male stale industry,
Right.
uh
Right.
eh, of course you've had lots of feelings, even if even if you're lucky like me, and you don't have much of this at home.
Right.
uh so yeah, so there was something important last year. I don't know what it was, but I hope it continues. I hope that uh we continue to see uh more mental health groups at companies and more mental health sessions in the industry at different conferences. Uh, what what advice do you have for uh, colleagues at any other company in our industry, or organizers at any of the conferences? Uh, how how does one start this? So right, if I'm the Marissa at, you know, Gallagher or Nationwide or
Right.
State Farm,
Right.
or whatever, who realizes this is important, how do we start this?
Okay. So thank you for lobbing me a softball. And I'm going to choke up on the bat. Because I have three answers to this,
Okay.
right? I had the luxury of being at a company of over 2,500 people that has the bench and the depth to be able to support a community of interest,
and and
right?
and,
So
and,
we
and
had,
hold on. Company of 2,500 people.
Mhm.
there's almost 500 that have signed up, so to speak, for right. So that's 20%, almost 10% of the company. That's incredible.
And the thing is like, that's a good number. Like
Oh
everybody
my,
keeps
it's an
saying, we have to
incredible
get more
number.
people. And I keep telling my colleagues, we're actually crushing it. It's, we're doing, like all of our
Yes,
communities of interest have 200 plus, 300 plus women in tech, has 500 plus. Like we
totally.
really,
Oh, it's a tech
yeah,
company. Yeah.
we've really,
Mhm.
like our company has really embraced it. Um, I was fortunate that we had the tool in place. So we
Mhm.
already had communities and Slack existed. And when I was
Mhm.
hunting and pecking, my boss said, you can go and start a topic on Slack. Right. So
Ah.
I started a topic of mental
Uh-huh.
health and wellness. And it's my favorite story because the woman who's the scrum master in our organization who sets them up, she said, and normally a scrum master will set up a channel and then they exit the channel because they're setting it up for somebody else. She set up the channel and she stayed. I was like, all right, we've got a person. And it was word of mouth, right? If you're in a big company, you probably have more luck being able to set up a
Of
community
course.
of interest.
Of
But
course.
I would say follow a playbook,
Mhm.
come prepared, come prepared with a mission and a vision of what you want to accomplish. We found having like a code of conduct, how, because it's a tough topic to have. So
Mhm.
when we came prepared to say, this is how we intend to have people engage with each other. And we want you all to sort of raise your hand and hold yourself to a standard of how you're going to comport yourself in this channel. And we were blessed because we have a large company, so we had a good number of volunteers. I would say if you work in a smaller company, so the dudes, I will refer to them as my favorite dudes, the dudes who sat up on the dais with me at AppliedNet. We had Ryan Deeds, Brendan Core, who's with Western Pros, and Justin Goodman, who's a total CSR. And so they all have different reach in the industry, but the way we all connected was on social media. So we all met through somebody. We connected on LinkedIn, but it was Ryan Deeds who was like, he's why I'm here, because watching Ryan Deeds taught me to have the courage to talk about the things in social media. Like if I'm going to run this community, I'm going to have to talk the talk and let people know this is me. This is my son. These are my challenges. And that's how I met Brendan Core. Because of that, that's how I met you. This is how I met Alyssa, right? Is having the courage to go out on social media and just hunt and peck for the topic. You can do a hashtag mental health and LinkedIn, and you will find people. You will find people who will talk about the topic. Um, the thing that I'm really passionate about, and I'm hoping that there can be some confluence in the industry, is that I have a lot of admiration for what Insure Equality brings to the table with their junior leaders and the work that they're doing creating HR handbooks and ERG resource guides. Because to your point earlier, Tony, you're talking about being that one lone person in the industry. In one of my sessions at AppliedNet last year, and it was a session where Applied's on stage, and I have a colleague from MMA, Marsh McLennan Agency, who also has ERGs. We were talking about creating ERGs, and there was this person in the audience, and they're working an 11-person agency in Alberta, Canada.
Remember
They
that?
didn't have the resources, but
Mhm.
Insure Equality can write like the things that they're building can help tendril out into the industry and support those people so that they can build their own. Even if it's a virtual community of interest, they can find other people to help support them in their ventures, in insurance, being a person in a marginalized community. And so I'm hoping through AppliedNet, we can try and start getting some of that going, because the preponderance of our agencies, they're small, they're
yeah,
50,
yeah, of course.
right? It's like
Um,
they don't have,
mhm.
here I am talking with somebody from a very large company about doing this to agencies who people have fewer than 50 people, so you have to, I would say start with topics, if you're smaller. But I would definitely look into the ether and see what type of, because there are people to follow and there are ways to keep the conversation going. And I think Brendan Core does a lot of that because he works at a smaller company. And so he relies on LinkedIn for the community and the word.
I, if you are in our industry in a small company,
Hmm.
uh, which is a lot of the agency space, a lot of the
Absolutely.
agency space, um, start by adding Marissa, myself, Ryan Deeds, Brendan Core. I'll include I'll tag them
Humans.
all on when I post this. I'll tag their LinkedIn's. Elisa Stamp,
Yeah.
Meg
Insure
McKean,
Equality. Yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
and basically very quickly you'll start seeing conversations. And if you start the conversation yourself on LinkedIn, the right people are already there
Mhm.
to participate. And uh, LinkedIn is fantastic for community building. It is still a bit of a public square, right? Uh,
Absolutely.
so if I'm not mistaken, Insure Equality has a Slack server.
Mhm.
I'm kind of confused on whether we're using Slack or whether we're using Mighty Networks, but Elisa can answer that question.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
basically, we do have a a community
Mhm.
that is free to insurance professionals, but it's not Google indexed LinkedIn. Right,
Right,
like where your boss is very unlikely to right. It won't be perceived as you're talking about this in public,
right.
and where you can find the support from people who get what you're going through and understand the world that we live in our particular industry.
Yeah.
So that definitely check that out. There are other online communities around the insurance. There's the Insurance Nerds Slack channel, insuranceslack.com. There's a great Reddit
Mhm.
and attached Discord server. So anyway, if you look around, if you ask around, we'll point you to the right places where you can find that community, even if you're too small of a company where you're not comfortable sharing this
Exactly.
things. And the Insure Equality Summit in Chicago, coming up in September. I think September. Uh,
August 26th and
Au-
27th. I
August
will
26th and
say
27th.
last year, as an insurance human, we know this, right? That space never existed before because
Mm-hmm.
that space was dedicated to it. And I have told people it was a damn privilege to sit there and watch it unfold, people talking about mental health challenges, about intersectionality, what it's like to be like in fear of reprisal at your job. There was a trans panel, like all of these things where you want to talk about serious,
Serious. Yeah.
important topics. And they were all there, and it was just a privilege to watch and learn and see everybody speak. And that's why I had the courage to come up to you at Applied Net and let you know we were having that session the next day. Because I
Uh,
saw you. I knew you were at IE. I was like, hey, we're doing this thing. And you took one of my favorite pictures because you took a picture of Ryan Deed's shirt from behind to be kind. Like it was just like this
uh,
great moment. But yeah, the IE summit is, I can't wait to see what they have to offer this year.
Elisa is just brilliant.
Hmm.
Just had lunch with her last week in Chicago.
Yeah, so
And Elisa is just brilliant. The way that the conference is designed, and it was a first time, so it'll only get better. Uh,
hmm
there was quiet space if
hmm
you're the type that needs to hide away for a little bit and recenter. There was guided meditation. There
hmm
was just so many little details to help everybody feel comfortable and recenter. Uh, yes, if you're having, I mean, if you're in insurance, come to the IA Summit, right? Which is
It
not the topic of today's,
totally.
but
Hearing you talk about it, I feel like it was so real that it felt unreal. That this thing was actually, it's like, is this
is
really,
this actually, and the
is
feedback
this for
we got,
reals?
the
Yeah, I
feedback
mean, it was just, yeah.
we
Go ahead.
got was lots of people saying, I've been in insurance for 20 years and
Yeah.
I have never been in a more diverse room. I have never felt so safe and supported.
Mhm.
So yeah, especially, I mean, it's a good conference for anybody, but especially if you are um some sort of diverse talent,
Mhm.
and you're in a small company where you're the only,
Mhm.
this is
Tom.
a fantastic, and it's not an expensive conference.
Mhm.
Getting to Chicago is easy.
Mhm.
uh it's worth the effort, absolutely worth the effort. uh right. um what what else could we do as an industry, right? If if mm, if you could uh share an idea or two with the leaders of our industry, right?
Mhm.
If the CEOs of the top 100 carriers uh asked you for help, like, we recognize it's a problem, what can we
Mhm.
do? what what could we change to improve this side?
So I think one of the important things that, and a lot of this is what we learned coming out of the pandemic, right? Is there are a lot of people who it was no question rough, absolutely rough, getting thrown into that type of pandemonium, but some people just immediately perform better because they didn't have any fear of the environment that they're in. And I'm not saying fear like, oh, it's dangerous, just you're always on edge. And the remote work has been a blessing to many. I think that a lot of things from the pandemic, like the flexibility in time, right? When there was a lot of humanity that allowed for people to perform better because they were given the space to do their job when they could. Right. And so I need to take my son to an appointment this week. My boss is fine, right? Because I have the ability to get my work in, do the work when I need to. I can work later that evening. So flex time can be very, very helpful for people who are in marginalized communities. I would say have the courage to trust your people. The thing that really pleased me about this community of interest is that we came with the vision that if you treat each other with respect and compassion and you treat each other like adults, that people will behave in kind. And I have yet to be disappointed in that. And that came through at the session at conference. That space, you saw it afterwards, that space was held in the same regard because that's the intent we walked into with it. And so I would say, trust your people to make the right decisions, and to comport themselves with the compassion that you would expect them to. I don't think it's anything earth shattering, but if you don't have a mental health community of interest, create one. And it doesn't have to just be ours, is all physical, mental, and physical disabilities of all kinds. Your people will surprise you when they openly and candidly discuss things with civility. So, um,
Fantastic. What is NAMI?
NAMI is the National Alliance of Mental Illness. And so sometimes I will use my NAMI backgrounds, which you can get on their website. Sometimes I use the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention backgrounds because I'm speaking for me right now, right? I work at Applied, but I speak for me. And NAMI always has campaigns in the month of May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month, and one of them was Being More Than Enough. So I actually, for this conversation, I like the hashtag on it too, because people always are more than enough. And so NAMI is a really good resource for people who are struggling.
Fantastic. Um, it is really cool to see a very white collar, very traditional, very conservative industry,
Mm-hmm.
little by little, um, progress to
Mm-hmm.
being a better place for humans to work at.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and thank you for being part of guiding us in that direction.
Thank you.
When this goes live, I'll tag you on LinkedIn. And for the listeners, while the session at AppliedNet did not get recorded, I don't believe,
We
uh
don't record. No.
we uh Ryan Dietz and Brendan, I can't remember if the third guy was
Brent,
also
Brendan Core and Justin
uh
Goodman.
I think all three of them, we recorded a podcast episode afterwards, so that
Did you?
is available, and I will link that below.
Okay.
I'll also link in the show notes your appearance in Meg's podcast, because that was fantastic.
Thank
So
you.
so significantly more resources for anybody who thinks this is important.
I've got
uh
another one that just dropped with Ryan Smith, who work he works for his own company now. But he's doing podcasts called Help Ryan Figure It Out. He's a cyber
uh-huh.
expert, but we just had a conversation about him raising a child with physical disabilities and talking through physical disabilities and being a caretaker. Like, there's a lot of resources out there,
Perfect.
because people are willing to talk about it.
Send me the link, and I'll include
Will
it in
do.
the show notes also. Uh, and again, thank you so much for your leadership in this, and thank you so much for your vulnerability, telling us the story. And thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.